Hey, welcome to Safe Schools. I'm Curtis Graves.
And I'm Andy Howard.
Andy, what's going on, brother?
Well, I think we got an exciting show today, Kurt. We're going to be talking to the United States Marshal for the Southern District of Alabama, Marshal Charles Andrews, and I think it's going to be an exciting show. We'll be right back.
Diesel is a very big industry, and I went into it in a 2-year program at the Bryant Career Tech with Tony Tillman.
When Jacob graduated from the Bryant Career Center, he had earned his diesel credential.
The Career Technical Center taught me a lot, all the way from not knowing anything about a motor or engine to knowing pretty much every single moving part of them.
MCPSS Career Tech. Start your future today.
The quality of education that I received from the Mobile County Public School System really prepared me for global success. Being an international opera singer, I get to travel all across the world. And one of the most important aspects about that is being able to communicate and work with people. And the Mobile County Public School System really equipped me to be greatly successful worldwide.
Traditional light bulbs actually generate 9 times more heat than light. Let's switch to Energy Star light bulbs and stop burning through cash. Saving energy saves you money.
Hey, welcome back to Safe Schools. We have a very special guest for you all today. We have U.S. Marshal Charles Andrews. Mr. Andrews, welcome to the show.
Good morning. It's a privilege to be here.
Well, we're excited about today's show because I know a little bit about your background, Marshal. I don't think our audience knows as much as I would like them to know. So let's get a chance to get into that a little bit. You're from the southern part of Alabama, is that right?
That's correct. Monroe County.
Monroe County. Since that time, you've done a few things in your life. I understand that you spent the majority of your professional career in law enforcement. So.
That's true. Right now I'm looking at 34 years.
Wow. Well, now you've been the U.S. Marshal for the Southern District of Alabama now since, what, 2011?
That's correct. January 13th, 2011. So a little over 3.5 years.
Okay.
So before you became Marshal, you were with the troopers, is that right?
That's correct. I started with the state troopers in June of 1980, recruit class 88.
Okay.
And upon graduation from there, I was assigned to the Highway Patrol Division in the Evergreen Post.
Okay.
Okay. You climbed the ranks in the troopers, I understand. Would that be an accurate summation?
That would be a very accurate summation. I've held the rank of corporal, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, major, lieutenant colonel, and colonel.
Colonel?
Yes.
Is it my understanding you were the first African-American colonel?
That's correct. I was the first African-American colonel appointed by Governor Don Siegelman. And I was also, in 1994, I was promoted to the rank of major. I was the first African-American to achieve that rank.
Well, that's quite an accomplishment. I've known Kurt Marshal Andrews my entire life, so I'm kind of familiar with his background, and he's kind of a modest guy about some of his accomplishments.
Well, we kind of want to break that today because earlier we sat down with you and we talked a little bit about history, and I was amazed. I was like a little kid basically just listening to the historical data that you had, that you shared with us earlier, and we're going to get into a lot of that a little bit later on. But Andy?
Marshal, in your capacities in those different responsibilities, I understand you have led various departments and sections of the troopers. Your last responsibility was over patrol?
Yes, I was chief of the Highway Patrol Division. Those are the most visible units within the Department of Public Safety. They're the ones that respond to the traffic accidents, assist the motorists, and check for traffic violations.
Traffic violation.
Let's talk a little bit about the duties of the head marshal in charge of the District of Alabama. What are some of the duties of the U.S. Marshal?
Well, they are varied. First and foremost has to do with protection of the federal judges and security of the court systems. We are responsible for managing the appearance of inmates, their transportation between the detention facilities, and also their designation and assignment to a Federal Bureau of Prisons facility. One of the other things we do is asset forfeiture. For the kids out there who like to notice all the guys driving around that don't have a job, but they got the big rides and all the gold and the bling bling going on.
Right.
If they are investigated and convicted, we seize their assets, such as the nice rides and the property, the cars, the gold, the money, and all of that is forfeited.
And we talked a little bit about what goes into being a marshal or being a federal employee or a state employee. A lot of times kids, young people don't understand the impact that social media plays on their future. Can you expound on that a little bit?
Social media has expanded to the point that a person's life is basically an open book. When you apply for a federal job or a job with the troopers or any other federal agency, to take it even farther, if you apply for an application for a cell phone or to get auto insurance, people go back and they look at your Facebook page. They look at your Twitter page. They want to see what your life has been about, you know, who your associates are and these type things. And all that is taken in consideration in making a determination as to whether or not to hire you, what your reputation is in the community, this type thing. Just to become a state trooper or deputy marshal, there is an extensive background investigation that is done on you. In my instance, to become the United States Marshal, it was an exhaustive background investigation that was done on me. I mean, they even tried to talk to people who were my elementary school teachers, and there wasn't very many of them left. But you know, that's how far back they go. They in all of these positions, they go into the community. You know, you will go through and you will list references. Well, we look at those references, but at the same time, we go and we talk to people that you don't list as references, because we really want to know what your character is. You know, and what how you would react in certain situations, and whether or not these people will actually recommend you to hold that job because they think you have the ability to do it.
And you said character, and you use social media to help figure out a person's character before you hire them. Now, we know that sometimes our young people and adults, unfortunately, put things on social media that does not always necessarily depict who they are as a person, but they nonetheless make a bad decision or a poor decision in putting things online that may hinder their advances in careers or anything in the future.
That's very correct. You know, you could put things online to be popular, to want to fit in, which may not actually be you.
Right.
But you have painted the picture already.
Exactly.
And that picture is there. You can't go back and
Can't
pull
go back
that
and
stuff
change it.
off of social media. Once you put it out there in cyberspace, it's there forever.
You're caught in the web.
You caught.
Now, about that, and as it relates to you, to become the U.S. Marshal, the United States Marshal, there's a process. Is that right?
That's very correct. Yes, sir.
And who is that nominates the marshal, and once the nomination is done, how is it confirmed?
Well, the United States Marshals serve at the pleasure of the President of the United States. And the President actually makes the nomination for that particular marshal. That nomination is, you're vetted, what they call vetted. And when I say vetted, that means that your resume and all your background information is submitted to the FBI in order to conduct an investigation. Once that investigation is completed, and if you pass the investigation, then your name is forwarded then to the president, who submits that nomination to the United States Senate. The United States Senate has all of the information about that individual. They discuss it, and then they go through a confirmation process. And if you are confirmed, then the president will move forward with having you appointed as the United States Marshal, and then you're sworn in.
Wow.
Well, we're going to take a brief break at this time, and we'll be right back with you.
The quality of education that I received from the Mobile County Public School System really prepared me for global success. Being an international opera singer, I get to travel all across the world. And one of the most important aspects about that is being able to communicate and work with people. And the Mobile County Public School System really equipped me to be greatly successful worldwide.
Traditional light bulbs actually generate 9 times more heat than light. Let's switch to Energy Star light bulbs and stop burning through cash. Saving energy saves you money.
Hey, and we're back. Now, here's the part that becomes very interesting for me. I'm about to become a kid again, real quick. I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna look all big-eyed for a second here. Let's talk about the beginning of the U.S. Marshal Service and some of the historical data that we talked about earlier. How long has the U.S. Marshal Service been in existence?
Actually, the Marshal Service is the oldest federal law enforcement agency in the country. It was established in 1789. As a matter of fact, the 225th anniversary of the Marshal Service comes up this week.
Wow.
In the Judicial Act of 1789 was enacted on September 24th of 1789, which created your federal court systems. When that took place, they also created the United States Marshal Service, which was the enforcement arm of the federal court system. Now, the first marshals' duties were very, very varied. Not only did they go out and were responsible for enforcing federal laws, you had some who provided protection to the federal judges, such as the Supreme Court judges, on occasion to the president. They conducted the census. They even collected taxes.
You guys were even there, played a significant role during the Dr. King March on Washington, is that right?
That's correct.
Right.
And James Meredith as well, over at the University of Mississippi.
In 1960, when James Meredith was first admitted to the University of Mississippi, there was a lot of civil unrest that took place. President Kennedy instructed the Marshal Service to provide protection for those individuals who were trying to register, and the Marshal Service responded by not only sending Marshal Service personnel, but they had to increase the manpower, so they deputized people from the Bureau of Prisons to assist them in this endeavor. And you know, that was a period of great unrest in which the Marshal Service had to show a lot of restraint, because the pictures you see where there was a lot of smoke, fires going on, those deputies were actually being fired upon. They had bricks and bottles and everything thrown after them. It was a situation where in law enforcement, you could have been justified in utilizing deadly force, but they were in constant contact with the White House. And the thing that they did not want was the situation to escalate and turn into a violent scene there. So those deputies had to show a lot of restraint. And the main weapon that they had to use was tear gas in order to disperse the crowds. But the marshals never fired a return fire, even though they were being fired upon.
Exercised a great deal of self-restraint and a great deal of wisdom in making a historic event come true in this country. And the marshals have a long history of making historical accomplishments that we hear about, read about, and talk about. lots of TV shows about
Talk
stuff
about the
the
Lone
marshals.
Rangers. What you about to
All right, Kurt, I'm gonna go ahead and go there.
Do it,
All right. Well, Marshall Andrews, I got a question about you. I've been a fan of the Lone Ranger a long time, but we had a conversation, and I just love to hear the rest of that story.
Well, back in the late 1800s, in the Western Territory of Arkansas, there was a Deputy United States Marshal. He was one of the first African-American Deputy United States Marshals by the name of Bass Reeves. Bass Reeves worked for Judge Isaac Parker. Bass Reeves was an individual. He was a great moral character, an upstanding individual when he was deputized and received the appointment. Bass could not read and write, but every warrant that he was given, he always went out and he was able to track down and arrest that person, and he would bring them back in. It was not uncommon for Bass to use disguises in order to capture his man. The story goes is that based on the exploits of Bass Reeves, that serves as the basis for the story of the Lone Ranger.
Wow.
Wow.
That's
That's
pretty
That's
significant.
pretty remarkable. Bass Reeves is obviously a significant figure in the Marshal Service history. One of the Earp brothers, I understand, might have been maybe a deputy marshal?
Yes, that was, a lot of people have the misconception that Wyatt Earp was a U.S. Marshal, but it was actually Virgil Earp who was the United States Marshal. And you know, we were talking about Bass Reeves. The United States Marshal Service Museum is opening this year in Fort Smith, Arkansas. And on display there is actually a statue of Bass Reeves.
Wow, okay.
My goodness.
You know, when you were appointed the position of United States Marshal for the District of Alabama, Southern District of Alabama, they had no idea they were getting a historical person who could give all this information to the public, which serves us to a benefit that I'm appreciative of being in your presence, knowing that you have such a profound knowledge of history.
Bass Reeves was not the first African American. There was somebody that preceded him that is of some note and we are familiar with.
Yes. President Rutherford B. Hayes appointed the first black African American United States Marshal, and that was Frederick Douglass. And during that era, one of the duties of the United States Marshal in the District of Columbia was whenever a statesman from a foreign country or significant dignitary had an appointment to see the president, it was the Marshal's duty to announce that person to the president.
Wow.
So that was, in this case, it was Frederick Douglass.
My goodness. I'm going to segue a little closer home. There's some historical things here in Alabama that are interesting about some exploits. I'm going to use that term, exploits. The Marshal here in Mobile in the early 1900s.
Yes, you know, the Marshal Service in Mobile, it dates back for many, many years. When the 11th Circuit of the Federal Court was created, March 10th, 1824, the Marshal Service was also established here in Mobile. Now there's a story.
Well, Marshall Andrews, I'm gonna interrupt you for a minute so that we can take a brief break because
Okay.
I'm real excited about what you're about to talk about. So just give us a second. We'll be right back.
Okay.
It started with me at Murphy High School when I came here as a freshman in 1973. I was very interested in math and science already before I came to Murphy. From Murphy High School, I was appointed to the U.S. Naval Academy, was able to get my college degree and also my commission in the U.S. Navy from the Naval Academy. But it truly was the foundation that I gained here at Murphy High School that allowed me to take advantage of that great opportunity.
back here again. Marshall Andrews, you were about to tell us something real exciting about the Alabama marshals and even the marshal here from the Southern District out of Mobile.
Yes, when I got here, I learned of a story that was told to me about an incident that actually happened up in Choctaw County. And this was back in the early 1900s, you know, when you didn't really have cars or whatever. But the story is that there was an establishment up there, and there was all type of vice going on in the establishment. And they contacted the marshal, the United States Marshal here in Mobile, who actually had to go out and catch the train to travel up to Choctaw County. And when he got there, he went there alone by himself. But in order to deal with this particular situation, he had to actually deputize locals to help him in carrying out his duties. And the story is that once he got his deputies together and went to serve his process or whatever, that they actually got into a shootout, OK Corral style,
Oh my
up in
goodness.
Choctaw County.
Sounds like an episode of Matt Dillon. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's very true, because you know, when you go back and you look at Mac Dillon, he was the U.S. Marshal, and Chester would have been his deputy United States Marshal. So, you know, the process has changed over the years. He would have the ability to go back and appoint or deputize his deputy, whereas now it's actually a civil service job that
And
you
it's
have to
a
apply
lot
for.
more of a professional position
Yes.
now as compared to the scenarios that we think about in historical events and in the late 1800s.
I think it's just amazing also how the Marshal Service has helped shape our society in so many ways, from the aspect of media as well, television shows, being the first law enforcement agency for the federal government. Let's talk about something real quick about remembering William Deegan 20 years later. You guys have on your website, and Ruby Ridge.
Well, you know, Marshal Deegan actually went out. He had a, if I remember correctly, he had a warrant. And I think that normally what ends up happening, you have an individual who will go to court. And when we actually get involved, it's one of two things. Normally they would go out and they would violate probation, which a warrant is issued for them, or they go through the court process and a warrant is issued and that person does not turn himself in into custody. Well, once we get the warrant, then we will actually go out to serve that warrant. And this is where you run into all types of individuals. You know, like this individual was a survivalist and a sovereign citizen. And so he did not have a lot of respect for law enforcement, and which led to an encounter with Marshal Deegan and shots being fired and him getting killed.
Wow. Part of this show has a lot to do with safe schools and bringing in people who are significant stakeholders in the community that promote having safe schools. And part of having a safe school is also preparing young people for the future as it relates to employment. You and I and Andrew spoke earlier about college and credit issues and how all that plays a significant role in the future of young people when it's time to get employment. Let's talk about that for a second.
Well, you know, so many times with the Marshal Service, we actually go out to different schools and we talk to young people. We tell them about the importance of not only having good grades, but using good judgment. And a number of us know that when you go and you enroll in college and you start out with the process, even if you're a freshman, you start at this desk to pay your fees, then you get your classes, and when you get to the end down there, you should be finished, but if you look, there's usually about 3 tables down there. One is Visa, the other one's MasterCard, and the other one is Discover. And you know, you have these opportunities in school to apply for a credit card. Well, if you apply for that credit card and get it and use it and you pay your bill on time, you don't have a problem. But if you apply for that credit card and get it and you neglect to pay that bill, it affects your credit rating. And that credit rating will follow you whenever you go out to apply for a job. If you apply a job for, well, in my position, I have to have a top secret clearance. They go back and they look at that credit rating to determine your debt to income ratio. And if it's out of whack, that will impact the decision to hire you, because they don't want people who might be susceptible to accepting favors or bribes or something
Right.
of that nature.
Plays a significant role in your future, in other words, when you make poor decisions in applying for credit and not adhering to the payment policies of that particular card.
That's correct.
Right.
So, as a young person coming along, trying to find yourself and pursue careers, it is important, the decisions that you make on every level. There's no time when it's okay not to think about being accountable and responsible. It can make a huge impact on your opportunity.
No question. When I go and talk to people, I tell them you need to keep two things in mind. That's responsibility and accountability.
I want to segue. I just need you to do this for me. You were telling us about these Alabama folks. That was a train robber. One last story.
Yeah, you know, people go back and they relate to Jesse James, and Jesse James, you know, robbing trains. Well, here in Alabama, there was an African American in the early 1900s by the name of Railroad Bill. If you want the complete story, you can actually Google it and it will come up. But Railroad Bill actually operated between Flomaton, Evergreen, and Atmore, Alabama. And that's what he did. He robbed trains. And he was actually a wanted poster that was put up for him. And he would actually venture over into central Florida and northern parts of Florida and things of this nature. However, one day he actually came into Atmore, Alabama, and he went into a general store there and he bought crackers or something. But one of the owners there recognized him from a wanted poster. And he sneaked around outside and got to a window and used a firearm and actually shot and killed Railroad Bill. And that ended his spree of train
So
robbery.
if you want to see that, you can go online and pull it up,
You
right?
can go online
All
and
right.
actually pull it up.
Well, at the end of Railroad Bill and at the end of our episode, we are hugely excited to have had you with us, Marshall Andrews. This was a great and exciting experience. I think I enjoyed it, and please remember to view Safe Schools with Andy and Kirk. Thank you for coming.